with a video first approach and mindset, sales folks can completely crush it, right? So it's like you're really just trying to make that human to human connection in a digital world. And the best way to do that is through video and voice, right? So like showing up very thoughtfully with research done and like showing up that you care about them because you do, right? This medium really supports that.
Welcome back to the Thoughts on Selling podcast. Today it is my pleasure to have Tim Bradley joining me as our guest for the day. Tim, welcome aboard. We're going to have a lot of fun today. First question for the guest is always, who is Tim Bradley?
Hardest question first. I love it. Yeah, Lee, thanks for having me today. I'm a father. Start with that. I have a soon-to-be 9-year-old and a 6-year-old girl-boy combo. They keep me very, very busy. And, they're sort of like the bedrock to reasons why I'm doing a lot of what I do in the day-to-day and in this profession, right? I think that's pretty relatable. Husband and founder, sort of more recently. Prior to that, video production, video marketer, explorer, adventurer, storyteller. Yeah, I'm excited to dive in.
That's cool. So our topic is generally related to selling and sales, and we've expanded a bit out to mindset and beliefs and practices. I'd like to explore a couple of things based on your background. The first is, let's talk about your experience in building a business. A lot of people want to do that, and not everybody takes that step outside the comfort zone.
Yeah, where to begin? Some of these are like more recent realizations. I'm almost 2 years into Pennant, our video marketing company. But I've realized and had a sort of greater appreciation for my parents, who were both like solopreneurs, as you know, they wouldn't be called that back in the day, but that's sort of the modern term, right? My dad ran a mobile hearing business, working on a lot of factories, OSHA requirements, things like that. And my mother ran a bed and breakfast out of our house, right? So I've always just sort of like recognize that as like, oh, you can create this path for yourself, right? You don't like, there's a lot of accountability to a lot of other things in your life, but like you can be sort of first accountable to yourself. So I like to start with that because it wasn't something I really realized until more recently, right? And I think, again, it's maybe because I'm a parent now, right? A lot of it just started coming out of college with that communications degree, right? Where it was like, a little bit of radio, a little bit of broadcast, a little bit of journalism, video, right? And this is, late 2000s, so like 2006, right? So it's like really this interesting time where film is now becoming digital, right? And the sort of like adoption of that, I was at the earliest point, which is I'm really grateful for because there was so much like exploration and DIY to the types of work I was doing at the time. A lot of it was like, action sports related. So just sort of getting immersed in that culture. And like, because of that, you were the jack of all trades, the one man band situation. So a lot of it was just through iteration and practice and failing often and failing fast and all of that. You just kind of build a little bit of like stronger, backbone to like how you approach the work and the sort of, and in my world of video production, it's very project-based. So there's like always something exciting and innovative and novel about like whatever approach you're doing, but also like there's going to be a different one coming next. So you're sort of constantly like learning on the fly, like in the zone, but also like constantly, right? So sort of that continual improvement and sense of learning, I take a lot of pride in, right? Does that make sense from like a baseline?
It does. So is your focus on excellence in using the tools or in working with customers or in delivering outcomes?
That's probably the best like evolution, right? It was like when I was a young buck, it was like, like I will go anywhere and everywhere with this camera, right? So I went from coast to coast because I'm in Massachusetts, sort of up the road from you, right? But I lived in California for a number of years, traveled to Chile, traveled all over the continental US, doing all sorts of production. Again, sort of in that early days of like action sports, but then that evolved to be like more of a freelancer. I did some editing for broadcast TV, and then I fell into this agency role, which I really like loved because I continued to be the sort of one-man band situation with, I was the first creative hire in a public relations agency. So again, just sort of that continual like DIY nature turned into this like entrepreneurial spirit, right? Of like, all right, well, if I want to grow as a person, as a professional, I have to bring others with me and like
Right.
build a framework of a team and like put systems in place and support one another, and therefore like crush it on our client goals, right? On what they're trying to achieve and build relationships within that, right? So I was at this agency for 12 years and built a team to about, 20, 25 creative professionals, had a, pretty sizable, not quite P&L level, but like I had some big responsibilities as far as revenue is concerned. And I was able to, again, it's a long period of time, but like really embrace the functions of a business owner, like through that experience, the client relations, the team development, the business development, the marketing, obviously the client fulfillment, right? And what we were doing creatively. So yeah, it just eventually rose to this point where it's like, I have all of the capacity and the learnings and the lived experience to take this leap, right? And so that was like one part of the big equation, I guess, to where I am today.
Tim, let's talk about your why. Why did you launch your own agency? What motivated you to do that?
So again, I'm almost 2 years in, and I actually had a sort of a different founder story at the beginning, which I'm realizing that what it really boiled down to was like this sense of impact. Like, again, I think it relates to my family and where I am and like my career and life. But it was like, I just want to make sure that the work that I'm putting out, that my team is putting out into the world is having the most impact it can possibly have, right? It's like these marketers that we're working with, like they have hard jobs and the sales folks by extension too, right? And it's just like, I want to make sure that the creative, that the videos that we are producing on their behalf, on their audience's behalf, are working and making the most impact they possibly can in that moment in time, and like as in perpetuity as possible, right? And it's no like whatever, like flack on the old agency or anything, because again, I have like so much like affinity and respect and pride like coming out of that place, but it just felt like I lost the forest for the trees a bit, where it's just like all of the work we were producing was for so many channels and so like from Kickstarter type startups to like Fortune 10 brands and every industry and like every style and aesthetic. And it just, that like lack of focus was really sort of like gnawing at me. And so Pennant was really birthed out of this need to like create better impact for the people we're serving and really supporting this gap that's in that middle of the funnel journey for buyers, right? So that sense of clarity, that sense of intention, like that is that why at the end of the day.
Salespeople everywhere, thank you. Well, and marketers and sales leaders, thank you as well. I think you and I talked about this in our last conversation, that you can double the amount of money you spend on leads at the top of the funnel. And that's horribly expensive.
Horribly.
And it doesn't give you 2x the return. Or you can spend a little bit at improving conversion rates at any stage in the funnel, intermediate stages in the funnel. And the cumulative, I mean, it's like compound interest, right? You get 10% here, that rolls up next time, that rolls up next time, that rolls up next time. And now you're looking at 30 or 40% improvement over time. And conversion rates have that same impact. So your focus on conversion within the funnel is an area where, and specifically, I mean, most of the focus on conversion within the funnel is pushing salespeople to make more meetings. And that's not an elegant way to do that.
Yeah. And that interest you're talking about, I read that as just trust, right? You're just like trying to build trust in those small percentage points over time, especially with the B2B marketers we're working with. Like these buyers, like they are savvy, like and especially now with AI and just everything, it's like the top of the funnel is like a bit of a wild west. Like everyone is coming to the table ready to buy, but you don't know that. Like you're trying to build trust on the, 95% of buyers that like could buy from you, but just aren't ready to buy in this moment. So it's through content and showing up in that way that builds that trust compounded over time. So then they're at your doorstep ready to sign.
I'll push back a little bit on that, Tim. I don't think they're ready to buy. That's think fair. They are fully informed.
Informed. That's actually much better.
Yeah, they're fully informed. They've done their research. They've Googled. They've talked with their peers. They have a lot of information in their heads. They don't know how to make a decision.
Yes.
No, seriously. And this is...
No, I'm smiling because like you're feeding right into my hands here, because that's like what at Pennant, like our whole thing is empowering decision making. Like that is really the goal of the work we're producing on behalf of our brands.
So without necessarily talking about a specific client or specific results, take us through a typical example of what you might do for that mid-funnel improvement.
Yeah. So most of the time, the brands, the partners we're working with, they are at a bit of an inflection point, right? So either like rebrand is kind of the most obvious thing. Like they have worked through their positioning, their messaging, and now they need to communicate that out to the world, right? And so the best received and most popular by and large medium is video, right? So it's like I'm always encouraging in those moments, if you can lead with video, this like video first mentality, you've put in so much effort into producing that thing that has like that thing being the video asset, that will have a cascading effect across the rest of your organization in how you talk about yourselves, how you communicate it, how you show up for it in your brand identity, in your assets, right? So taking that like big swing to produce that like tip of the spear, that flagship asset, we call those anthems. Those best express your brand's why. And in those moments, like a rebrand is when those tend to be really powerful. Similarly, like a sales kickoff scenario, right? Where you're trying to motivate and empower and just sort of stimulate that emotion to like launch into a really successful year. An anthemic type of video really supports that type of environment, right? It like gets the juices flowing towards like the goals of that year, right? Now, bring buyers further down the journey, right? Like that explainer piece, the piece that explains what you do and how you do it is where it's most impactful, right? So we're usually working with the product marketers, the product marketing managers at that point, but obviously sales, like they need these tools, these assets to help bring that prospect further down their decision-making journey, right? So the explainers are always popular, and whether you like the term or not, like those assets like really work.
Right.
And similarly, if you approach them really thoughtfully with pain point solution set types of like exposés, you can make like assets across industries and verticals addressing very specific ICP pain points, et cetera, right? So it's like they're very like malleable to whatever the situation
Leverageable,
is.
yeah.
Yep. And then lastly, that validation that you're really trying to infuse, right, with those customer stories. Anytime you have a customer that's willing to get into a storytelling situation, like jump on that opportunity, because like their buy-in, like just showing up at the door, willing to do that, shows how much they respect and appreciate the offer you've been giving them, and they want to be the mouthpiece and vocalize that to your audience, right? So those endorsement videos, those customer success stories, like those are super powerful, especially when it's time to convert.
Tim, it sounds like most of what you're describing falls in the category of well-planned, professionally developed video assets. What's your perspective on salesperson-generated, more individualized, customized video messaging?
Yeah, I love that question. Yeah, and you're right. So that what I just described is a framework we call the video marketing trifecta, right? So that differentiation of your brand, the demonstration of your solution, the validation, to build trust, right? So those are like the premier sort of tools, right? But that's just like one function of this. And like with a video first approach and mindset, sales folks can completely crush it, right? So it's like showing up really thoughtfully, and it can just be on using, Zoom in this way or an iPhone too. And just that you're really just trying to make that human to human connection in a digital world. And the best way to do that is through video and voice, right? So like showing up very thoughtfully with research done and like showing up that you care about them because you do, right? This medium really supports that.
So how do you feel about reps making their own videos?
I very much encourage it. Yeah,
okay, cool.
Like, that's exactly it. Like adopting the medium and getting used to the mechanics of that is a huge like value add to the potential buyer, but then also to just your repertoire and skill set as a sales professional for sure.
How do you, this is a topic or a concern that's common to any sales asset. And with video, you have the opportunity to create even more interesting results. How do you ensure that it is professionally done, that it meets standards, that it's on brand, et cetera? When a rep might literally be creating that asset on his phone sitting in the front seat of his car.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just in expectations, right? So like what is your audience, what is your potential buyer expecting of you in this moment, right? So like if you've built your whole system, your funnel, right? Like they have had all these touch points with
Mm-hmm.
like premier video assets like I've described earlier, right? So like they are arriving at your doorstep, as you said, informed because they've been doing their homework and research and
Mm-hmm.
comparisons to your rivals, et cetera, right? So at this point, you're just trying to make that relationship, infuse that and make that even stronger with all of the touch points that you can and
Mm-hmm.
video in that way. They're not expecting you as a salesperson to like show up with this super high production value asset because they've already experienced that from you,
No,
right?
no $1,000 backdrops.
Right, exactly. So it's like that stuff is the responsibility of the brand. Now, for you as a sales professional, you're responsible to help close that deal. And the best
Mm-hmm.
way to do that is to interface in the medium that is like if you can't get in the room with them, like that is the most preferred medium by audiences
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
That's interesting. So do you consider what you create as marketing assets or as sales enablement assets?
I'd actually be curious to hear what you think, but we are working with marketers
Mm-hmm.
most of the time in the day-to-day. However, one of the first touch points we ask to get on with the sales leader, right? Like so that we can understand the most common like pain points that their buyers are coming to them with. And similarly, what are the tools? 'Cause that's what these things are at the end of the day. These videos,
Mm-hmm.
they are tools
Right.
to support sales enablement, right? So
Yep.
it's like, it's very like we take a lot of pride at trying to like bridge that gap, because it's a storied rivalry between sales and marketing in general, right? But it's like having that opportunity to infuse better collaboration. Like we take a lot of pride in that.
Right. Traditionally, I would define a marketing asset as something is targeted at an end user, and it's typically, but not always, a one-to-many messaging, right? With ABM, it might be one-to-one.
Yep.
Right? With sales enablement, the asset primarily is designed to influence seller behavior. So traditionally, it's designed for internal consumption as opposed to being shared with customers. But there's always room for crossover.
The reason why I pause there is because like I think it doesn't have to be one or the other, right? Because it's like
absolutely.
Again, like I keep saying the medium, but like
Mhm.
when you produce a video, like there's so many facets and components and layers of complexity. But then once you've invested in that way, it's so much easier to parse out and to iterate and to be like selective to those individual needs, right? Because you've invested in the sort of premier piece, right? So a lot of the times the brands we're working with, it is that like that hero piece, but then how can we segment it out for respective audiences? And sometimes that is for like recruiting efforts and talent development and employer branding too. It's not mutually exclusive to just marketing, but we are working with brand marketers most of the time. So that is like infused in that way. But to your point about like mass audience, I mean, that's what advertising is for, right? And paid media in that way. So like, we love this middle of the funnel focus because it is like more deliberate to pain points and solutions and to like individual ICPs versus like broad strokes about a brand, right?
Right. One of the benefits of video assets is that it's easily consumable and it typically tells a story. And anytime a rep is passing a video to a customer, they better have looked at it first. And if they've looked at it first, there's the internal reinforcement of that messaging of, oh, I didn't know we did that, or I didn't know those were the results, or that's an interesting way of describing our ideal customer profile. And so there is that internal reinforcement, even if the specific asset is designed for a customer consumption.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about storytelling. Let me tell you a story about that. No, sorry.
Yeah.
Let's talk about storytelling. The standard metric is people remember like 5% of what they hear. Maybe, if you're lucky, on a good day, if they're taking notes. They always remember how you made them feel. And so I would much rather have a powerful speaker that motivates people as opposed to a smart speaker who informs people.
Well said.
Because people don't know what to do with the data. And by the way, when I was running enablement at one large company, I would work with product managers and say, first third of your enablement deck has to be all about the customer. What's the problem we're solving? What does it look like in their environment, et cetera. The second part is, let's talk a little bit about the product. The third part is, when you need help, where do you get help? And if you don't remember anything else, remember, ask Lee. And literally, I had an email address at that company. It was Ask Lee. And if any one of the 10,000 salespeople didn't know where to go, they would send a message to asklee@google.com and they would get me and I would sort it out, right? So in the absence of them knowing where else to go, those of us on the enablement team, we were pretty well networked.
That's awesome.
And so my goal was to inspire them, give them a little bit of knowledge, and give them that leave behind of, if you don't know what to do, here's your lifeline. It's that inspiration that I look for. And as a speaker, I don't look to inform, I look to entertain, because I want people to remember that I'm not sure what he said, but I really enjoyed how he said it.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, right? I often describe these videos, these tools we're creating as like, they should be the proverbial like carrot on the string, right? Like you want to draw your potential buyers in, and like really you want to get them on the phone or in a call or in an in-person situation with the sales team, right? Because like people buy from people. Like that is like truly what's going to happen at the end of the road here at conversion, rather. So with these videos, it is really like, and that's what the framework that we have with this trifecta is like, the Anthem really speaks to like the hearts of your buyers, right? Like they want to see themselves in you and their beliefs and what in their professional journey and what they're trying to achieve and how you can help them on that next step on their path, right? And the explainer speaks to the minds. It's like, cool, like I understand like exactly how this fits into my tech stack or whatever it is, right? And like it's enough to inspire them to understand like how they can rejigger the puzzle that is their day-to-day to see a better picture at the end of it all, right? And then those endorsements, right? Like that's that final validation or one of several, right? You should have multiple client stories based on, again, industry, pain point, ICP, et cetera. But like that opportunity to put your buyer in your current customer's shoes is huge. And that's where story like really is front and center, right? Because you're like understanding like, oh, I had this exact same I'm living this same situation. Right. This seems like a really powerful solve for my challenges here, right?
Right.
And so like that trifecta speaks to the hearts, minds, and I even say like the guts, right? That gut feeling of investing in a brand, right, is really powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I have hard data to back this up. It's just been many years of experience that organizations will spend months and months and months gathering facts, data points, features, lists of features. They'll create long spreadsheets with, capability 3, vendor 1, weight this. And then when push comes to shove, the decision is usually subconsciously, there's a lower risk going with that person as opposed to that person or that vendor versus that vendor, because that vendor didn't show up on time for all the meetings. That person showed up early every time, well prepared, agendas circulated in advance, and it's
a story. Yep.
Yeah, told a story. It's a comfort factor.
Yep.
It's the perception of risk, and people buy from people, as we said. They won't buy from people they don't like. Liking you probably isn't necessary, and it absolutely isn't sufficient, right? They have to trust you. They have to trust that what you're talking about actually works and that you stand behind it. Here's an interesting example. When I was running sales for a business services firm, my CEO sat in on one of my early deals, and it was a large customer. He asked the customer a question that blew my mind. He goes, so what are the things that can go wrong once we start to go into production mode? And I said to myself, why on earth would he ask that? And the answer was, he wanted to suss out, he was in discovery. What are all the issues that we need to know about so we can be successful? And by the way, these may be issues that the customer might be thinking about because we weren't the only shop in the business. and they probably already had experience with other vendors in that business, and they know what can go wrong. And if we don't address it and let them know that we've got that handled, then we probably also are facing a closed no one decision too.
Yeah. And I mean, I love that question too, because it does poke holes at, it's kind of a win-win for the buyer, right? Like either they get a really sound response that clarifies a point of their decision-making process, and it just gut checks on the trust, right? If you're like, oh, we don't have those problems. I was like, man, everybody has, like all of these systems have some sort of problem, one place or another. But it's more that like, well, tell me about the customer support. Tell me about like these certain situations that like help me buy into the trust that you're trying to, like the belief system you're trying to push on me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
So Tim, tell me a story of one of your favorite engagements. And again, I don't need specific details. I don't need customer names or social security numbers.
Yeah.
But tell me a story of one of your, and I'm not listening just for entertainment. What I'm listening for actually is your secret sauce.
Okay.
Because you and I both know that in the selling of professional services, it's our secret sauce that allows us to be successful over and over.
I love it. Not to fall right into the trope of like, you're only as good as your last project, which is like the sort of creatives, whatever, the thing they deal with all the time. But the most recent one actually is a really powerful story, I think, because of the individual that we were working with, right? So like, I think,
go ahead. Blame it on the customer.
No. Like in the best.
It worked out great because of the customer.
Yeah.
No pass.
Yeah, exactly. No, fair point. But no, it's more, my point is more that like, you know, the brand recognition and the logo, you know, the sort of like, I heard this earlier today, that like the logo garden that's in the sort of like sales deck or whatever of like, look at all these impressive brands we worked with. It's like, yeah, but it is those people that you're working with and like supporting them on their individual like ambitions and goals and directives is like really what like gets us out of bed every day, is like the supporting of those individuals that are leading these brands, right? So yeah, this situation for very large Fortune like 30 health tech company, a new point of contact there, new role, new to the business, like uphill, not necessarily uphill battle for her, but just like new face, new voice, needs to make a bold first impression. And we had the task was like an Anthem video, an explainer video, the two sides of the same coin to like support these like very impressive enterprise clinical software, basically like hardware software to go into like large scale healthcare systems, right? So,
and that is a risk averse environment.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and so that in and of itself was like, all right, this is such a cool opportunity to like make an impression on behalf of our client contact, allow her to make the best first impression possible with her new set of peers. And this is for a big sales kickoff in Vegas where she was giving like a big presentation of, you know, their suite of things that her marketing team is doing to support sales, right? And so she knew that she needed to lead with video because, again, it's like the most sort of like critical tool that's very challenging to produce, but it synthesizes all of the things, that the messaging and the brand and the aesthetic and the tone. And so because of that, we were just excited, right? So anyway, we produced the assets. It was like 4 days of production, tons of motion design, working with the SMEs on her team, both to be on camera and to help like, you know, from a writing standpoint and how we produce these things. It was lots of talent. We shot everything in their customer experience center, right? So like very, very involved. But there was like two quotes that really stood out to me early from her. And these came by text messages. So that like in and of itself is just like a rapport thing. That's just like, that's awesome to have that sort of like line of communication. But she was like, her two bosses like apparently lit up messaging boards, leadership messaging boards about how excited they were coming out of the production and how this is sort of like reinventing the way they approach their marketing and sales collateral, like going forward. So that's a huge win for her, right?
Yeah.
And then her next text was like, we're infusing a bit of B2C vibes into a regulated B2B world, right? And that just sort of is like from a paradigm shifting perspective, right?
Right.
And so fast forward, produce the tools, produce the videos. She showcases them at the kickoff in Vegas. And I wish I had the like exact stat in front of me. I could gut check it. But she's basically like, they did a poll of all the, like the 500 people that were in attendance. What was their most favorite, or like was the most like impactful moment of the show? And it was her presentation. And they're like, and the sales team's like, what are the things they're most excited about this year? And it's video, having video assets like these to support their initiative. So like that whole story was just like tremendous, but it all like, for me, I'm just like so excited and happy for my point of contact and like what this means for her in her new role in this large brand. Right. And of course, the backside of that for Pennant is like, well, there's more work for us, right? So it's like just the retention of that opportunity. So yeah, that one, as you can tell, I'm pretty fired up about.
So now I'm going to dig down into that story. Why was your client and the sales team so excited about the plan and the assets that they saw? What was the secret sauce that got you to a point where she was getting, 10s, everyone else was getting 3s and 4s? Because look, I can put together a video.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
I can go on a TaskRabbit and find someone to put together a video for $10 an hour. And it's going to, the technical term is this, it's going to suck.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to come at that one from a few different directions, right? Like one is like from her vantage point, the best first impression possible is to speak to the hearts and minds of these audiences and the medium of video, most powerful way to do that. So that was like baseline, but from there it's a very complex story, right? And like we're not in a hospital, we're not doing this in a practical setting situation, but like how do we use the power of story and visuals to support that? And so a lot of it is in the rudimentals of show versus tell, right? So like a lot of what we're showing is hardware software combinations, and like we're staging and setting up environments that are hospital-esque, right? We had the hospital room situation. We had the sort of command center vantage point. The complexity is all behind the scenes, where it's like we shot all of those screens blank. They were just black screens, right? And then in post-production, we're adding the animation and the VFX and the tracking, so it's like spotless. So it looks so good, and that's just like from a salesperson's point of view, like they want everything to look pristine. Right. We have to do that. So that was like table stakes, and then just the functionality of it all. We had a lot of control.
I'm so happy you said that was table stakes.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say a pretty video is a pretty video. It doesn't motivate people to do things unless there's an alignment with messaging and feelings. And so carry on.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so there was 2 videos. I'll speak to one more specifically. Like the one, our ICP, the front center ICP is clinical leaders, right? So we had to have this character that embodied that and show her day to day, show that pain out the gate. So it's relatable and people can see themselves in this situation. And then the turn of, using music as a cue, using the voiceover, like the narration to help bring you through this story, right? And showcase the power of this new system that supports these clinicians and what they're trying to achieve, which is really just better patient outcomes and patient care at the end of the day, right? And that's what we all want. But then there was also the IT leaders side, right? This sort of secondary audience for this. So we use an SME to be included within the framework of this video. And that was a conscious decision because it helped humanize this brand through this leader, this person talking direct to camera, right? So like in the sort of engagement of the piece, it was really impactful, but then just on the human connectivity level, right? So yeah, like you have to be like so thoughtful to that approach and aesthetic. And at the end of the day, like the thing we always say for Pennant is like in my business, is we are advocating for your audience more than anyone else in this project, right? And like we therefore get to be objective to whatever sort of internal comms and politics and history that's happening inside your 4 walls, because we need to produce a video that empowers these buyers to make a decision. And ideally it's in your camp, right? And that's the goal.
I love the approach of the day in the life that you describe of showing that clinical trials manager and the challenges that they face. And it's powerful because one, that clinical trials manager says, I was heard.
Yes.
This company gets what I'm up against. They're not shoving a data brochure at me. The part that I really love, and this is frequently missed in enablement, is salespeople need to know who they're calling on and what that person's office looks like and what that person does at 8 o'clock in the morning and at 5 o'clock at night and everywhere in between, and what their care abouts are. When I helped launch a cloud-based data warehouse years ago, I created the VP of manufacturing persona who was worried about manufacturing quality. I created the VP of safety persona who cared about someone getting hurt in the plant.
Yes.
And like I had 6, and the cool thing about the platform was the use case was identical across the different organizations or departments. The data was different, but the ability to make informed decisions on important stuff was the same. And the safety story, I started off with someone you walk into a plant, and if a listener has ever worked in a plant or walked in a plant or sold in a plant, at the front door, there's a chart that says number of days since last injury.
Yeah.
And there's a number there. And the people in the plant take that really personally because each time that gets reset to 0, it means someone got hurt, someone bled, forms were filled out, maybe someone died.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I showed was someone walking up to that chart and erasing the number and putting up that goose egg, which meant someone just went to the hospital. And so I got visceral reaction.
The show versus tell, right? Like that moment, it ingrades in you and evokes that feeling, that set of beliefs that builds trust, all of that. Love it.
Yep. And we called on one big company who said, you're spot on. You're exactly what we need. In fact, we needed to hear it 6 months ago, and we just spent $10 million on that problem.
Yeah.
Which was sad to hear.
Yeah.
And refocus the teams on finding that next company.
Yeah. The other thing I really like you said there is that while these ICPs are nuanced and different for all the right reasons, like there is this sort of horizontal thread, and it is story, right? And so it's just recognizing the opportunity within that to tell one-to-one stories across these different ICPs, but do it in a way that's sort of authentic to this brand that this business that you're working on behalf of, and the messaging and the tone and the identity, right? That's just where everything gets really infused and is super powerful.
So Tim, what's next for you and Pennant Video?
So I founded the business June of 23, July 4th in there, the sort of sense of freedom I love as part of the journey. But a lot of the early days were foundational to building the operations, building the brand. Cool. We did that. We turned on our own mechanics for content, right? So showing up on the channels, namely LinkedIn, for that sort of visibility strategy, right? And just showing up with value and stories and experience that resonates. So that is off to the races. We've been producing myriad reports and ebooks and our own videos, right, to support the collateral of our sales and in the conversations we're having day to day. The networking, the referrals, all that is working. And so we have the sort of wind in our sails of inbound, right? And now it's turning that corner of outbound and prospecting, and to continue the sailing analogy, the rudder, right, that's pointing us towards the direction we aspire to go, right? So for us, that's really working with brands that embody this other set of 3, right? This sense of safety, security, sustainability, right? Building products and tools and solutions that make for a better world, right? So that's where we want to align ourselves, because we know we can make an impact on behalf of these brands, and there's a ripple effect to communities and individuals all over, right? So that's the goal. Is we have our habits and our routines to support the inbound and showing up, and now it's just focusing our concerted efforts towards outbound.
And you'll use video for that?
We will be using video for that. Yeah, great question.
Tim, where can people find you?
Our website is Pennant, like the flag, pennantvideo.com or pennant.video. I'm also on LinkedIn, Tim Bradley. And Yeah.
That's awesome. Just a couple of quick takeaways. One, key point I think we hit was the power of storytelling. Number two, the power of, and we didn't get into this specifically, but understanding the metrics of the funnel and focusing on where conversion rates can be improved effectively and maybe with a little bit of out-of-box thinking or not, but not just stuffing more leads in at the top of the funnel, but in handling the opportunities, or they're not opportunities, they're people as they parse through the funnel. And last, marketing assets can be enablement assets.
Yes.
Because if the message is good, it reinforces how the salespeople think of what they're representing in the market.
Well said.
Tim, it's been a pleasure. Thank you again
so
for
fun.
spending the time.
Thank you, Lee.
Thanks, Tim.